Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to Full Course Yellow, the in-pit lane kickoff show at the earlier time of 8:30. It's taking me a long time to get used to this 8:30 start thing. I'll let you know. I was just saying to the guys before we came on, I literally just jumped on about 5 minutes ago because it's way too early for me. I mean, it's takes a bit of getting used to. But anyway, the good thing is we've got a group of people with us who are. It's not too early for them, and it's not too late. So we've got Doc is with us again, Craig Ledigo. We've also got Pete Johnson and also Richard Outram joining us as well. So thank you for joining us as well. Let's see, Box is in. G'day, Box. How are you? Box is joining us. So good to see you again. We've got people watching. If you're watching and you haven't told us where you're watching from, or if you haven't said hello, or if you've got any questions, do make sure you contribute on the Facebook page or on the YouTube chat, and we'll put up the messages as they come through. Well, within reason, we'll put up the messages as they come through here on the program. But anyway, let's before we get it back to In Pit Lane, 9:30 tonight on Channel 31. Let's catch up with what's happening. So where do we start? Where do we start, guys? I suppose let's start with Formula One is coming back this weekend in the United States with COTA, and very much confirmed. Daniel Ricciardo has just said that even if Haas offer him a ride, he's not going to take it. He's going to sit out the year and basically wait for something better. Pete, do you think that's a good idea? Oops, hang on, you're on mute. Pete, there you go.
I think that's a mistake, honestly, because if he's having trouble getting around the car this year, and he's going to sit out a year, obviously there won't be a major rule change, but there'll be further development, and he'll be behind the eight ball.
Were you just giving Gunther a ring and saying it was Danny Rick like I suggested, were you, Pete? That's why you're on mute, just having a chat to Gunther on the side, were you? Because Gunther said, just, Danny, give me a call. Call me. Oh, I've got a seat for you.
Yeah, well, I think the problem's going to be it depends on if he does get that test driver and sort of reserve driver role at Mercedes. I mean, that would take care of the getting behind the wheel. Certainly not in a race, but I think that as he said, that he was not particularly looking forward to the possibility of, as he said, running around and battling for 15th and 16th place again. If he's going to get into a car, he wants one that he's got a halfway decent chance of getting some good points and taking the occasional win. So,
well, you could get Lewis to design a steering wheel for him and it'd go faster.
Well, this is true. We got some people coming in. G'day, Amanda. We met up with Amanda at the Mini GP. She was riding her bike, not her motorcycle. She rode in on a cycle. I don't know where she'd ridden from, but she used to race bikes as well, and real bikes, motorcycles, and was heading out to. Just as we were leaving, she was coming in to catch up with some of the Mini GP action out there on it. So I've been out at Oakland for a couple of weeks in a row now. So
very highly complimentary of the show as well too. I imagine she'll be watching tonight. She said she's been watching for a long time and a huge fan. So hello, Amanda. Yes, thanks for the support.
And she'll be very pleased with our guest tonight, Abby Wingert, who's joining us. Very well spoken, very impressive, very professional, and she'll be racing at the historic Sandown, which is coming up in a few weeks' time, and she'll be talking about that. So be watching. Flick over to either the In Pit Lane YouTube channel, or if you're in Melbourne, tune over to Channel 31, and you can watch the program live and catch up with Abby and see what she has to say about how she got involved in historic racing and also racing in the Excels alongside you, Richard. She's run a bit of.
Yeah, I could probably see you somewhere up the front.
Have you seen a camouflage XL out on the track with you? Have you? Because it's camouflage.
Sorry, say that again, Doc.
Have you seen a camouflage XL out on the track with you?
Yes, I have.
Would stand out. Well, that is Abby actually probably either bumping you from behind or in front or off the track.
Oh right? No, I was just waiting for to see her headlights coming back up on me as she overtook me again.
Yeah, she's
And,
for keeping camo XL, the camouflage.
Yeah, I know the
camouflage.
car. Yeah.
So she's right there. But at Historic Sandown, she'll be driving in the regularity and driving the Elfin Clubman from Bill Hemmings, just one of Bill Hemmings' many Elfins from the Elfin Heritage Centre. And we can find out tonight about how that relationship started, how she got involved in driving the cars for Bill, and also what the future might hold in that respect. And it's if it happens, it's pretty exciting. So. We'll
Evening,
keep
Dave.
that up there. Yeah, Dave, good day from Tailem Bend. Of course, they're racing at Tailem Bend this weekend. So yes, he's probably may well be over there for the races, the Shannon's Nationals happening at Tailem Bend, and there's I believe that's actually going to be. It's a bit confusing because I believe it's actually going to be on 7+ on the weekend.
Oh.
So if you're looking to catch up with that, that's on 7+ as well. Also from South Australia, SB is with us as well. So SB, good day to you as well. So
have a look. He's got the Sexton Falcon. There you go. Geez,
yes,
that gets a lot. That gets a lot of
there's
lots
a
of
name.
G's. That gets some G's, doesn't it? Oh, that's hilarious.
Very, very, very litigious chap, Mr. Sexton was. I remember doing a send up report one night and got a very nasty report because I pointed out in the report that he actually spun out of contention while leaving the hotel car parking lot. So,
extremely underrated driver.
He wasn't happy about that. Wasn't happy about that at all. Apparently,
very underrated driver. Because if he got out in track, he could have shown his potential. As you just said.
Yeah. Yes. But anyway, but it's a lot more professional. That would never happen now, of course. I mean, drivers get in purely and simply on the benefit of their skill and daring, not on the weight of their money or their father's money.
We can talk about Super 2 later because I've got a contentious subject that I read about today on that. So that's I'd like to talk about that. Ooh. Super 2 and money and supercars and the pathway. Did anyone else read up on that today?
I don't know. I've been out all day.
We'll talk about that. We'll go back to. We'll keep on Formula One, and we'll catch up. I haven't
seen there. So anyway, they're running. They're renaming one of the corners at Coda after Mario Andretti. I'm surprised they haven't done it before now. But anyway, they've finally done it now. So congratulations to Mario Andretti, and he was in action on the weekend. He actually drove one of the not one of the current McLaren Formula One cars, but one from a few years ago at Laguna Seca, and he wasn't hanging around. 82 years old, and after a couple of laps, he didn't quite hit all of the apexes and get it right 100% right, particularly coming down through the corkscrew. But he wasn't hanging around. He wasn't sort of holding back at all.
Did he line up? Did he?
Yes, and he also, I think they waved him in at one stage, and he went, "Nah, screw you. I'm enjoying this too much. I'm having another lap."
Two more laps.
Just one at full speed,
or just one more.
Yeah, 2 laps, one at full speed.
Yes, I'm doing one more.
One more installation lap. Yeah, thank you.
But he had fun. And also, it was fun watching Zach Brown. Zach was running the ex-Garth Tander and Nick Percat Bathurst winning car. And it was really funny to see the supercar running around. It was very competitive. Finished 4th and 5th in amongst a whole bunch of GT1 and GT2 cars. The race was won by a 1-2 to a couple of GT1 Corvettes from the early 2000s. But they had a couple of Porsches afterwards. But Zach was right on the tail of one of the Porsches, and did well, and the car got a lot of attention from the commentary. The commentary was terrible. They had no idea what the car was. It was like, it's a Holden WR something, and it's from Australia, and it's wow, and that's about as
it's fast and it goes quick, and that's all we can
Sounds
hear.
Amazing. It races at Bathurst, and that's if you've never seen Bathurst, it's an amazing track, I believe.
At least they didn't say Bathurst.
Like Jeremy Clarkson.
Yeah.
Don't worry. I was talking to Brett last week, and I watched a couple of news reports because that was the easiest way just to catch a wrap of the MotoGP. And when they were doing the lead-ups, I won't mention any names, but a couple of news reports absolutely butchered the MotoGP names and the report itself. And that they're Australian newsreaders that should be knowing their stuff. And anyway,
well, it's very difficult if you're not sort of doing it often. I mean, I imagine that like certainly plenty of time I've stuffed things up on the news. If you're not,
we do, but
up to date
just everyone, how do you pronounce Ducati?
Ducati.
Yeah, no, so it's not Ducati then. That's all right. So
okay.
One of them came out with Ducati, and that's an Australian newsreader, and that's anyway. So an experienced one at that. So anyway, let's not even go into the names. So anyway.
Well, I mean, you also get them. I mean, if people coming, a lot of the news services come out of Sydney now, and sort of to sit there and they do the weekend Melbourne bulletin out of Sydney and talk about places like Dandenong and Cranbourne.
This one was done in Docklands. I don't know where they do it.
But anyway, as SB's saying, confused with the TV situation for the Bend, because I was the same when I saw that it was on 7+. I went, what? So it appears as if the deal on 9 and Stan is actually just for the TCR S5000, Trans Am, those categories. So not for the actual Shannon's Nationals, because those categories aren't running this weekend. So you've got the production cars, you've got the GT. Only 12 cars again in the GT. But once again, really good drivers involved. A lot of the Bathurst guys, Dave Reynolds and Shane Van Gisbergen and Jamie Whincup, they're all running this weekend at the Bend. But so it's going to be streaming on 7+. But that means you don't have to subscribe to Stan. So at least you can watch it if you want to watch it, you can watch it for nothing. So and it's not a particularly big weekend of motorsport, sort of locally. Unfortunately, Calder Park tomorrow night has been cancelled again because of the forecast for the weather. So second week in a row, and that's the interesting story that came out this week in Auto Action. An interview with Bruce Williams from Auto Action with both Rodney and Kim Jane about the future of Calder Park. With Rodney basically saying what he's sort of said privately for a long time, but hasn't been prepared to say publicly, but he's saying it now, and that is that Calder Park is not for sale. Calder Park is not being shut down. Calder Park will be developed at some stage, but it's not the highest priority in his life at the moment, but it is happening, and slowly but surely we will have racing back, and not just drag racing, but he also said that Motorsport Australia came round and have examined the venue and given them sort of a shopping list of the things that they need to do to bring it up to modern specification. And also, he's even talking about the possibility of, quote, reviving the Thunderdome. Richard, you had a lot to do with that back in the day, so what do you think?
I wouldn't walk around the Thunderdome without a carabiner and a very long line of rope in case I fell through it. Man, that circuit is in terrible shape. There are parts of the upper wall which are sticking out, 30, 40 centimetres from alignment with the other ones. They just tear a car in half. And there's holes which need abseiling down and stuff like that.
So the water damaged McIver Highway between Melbourne and Bendigo is in better shape at the moment, is it?
Yeah. And you'll never forget that bubbling goose which used to be down the bottom of at the back of the Thunderdome.
Yes,
and the five-eyed fish.
Yes, the green waterfall. It was very spectacular.
Oh, the nuclear containment center is still there. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's part of the problem that they've got there, is it really can't be used for much else. Now, the other thing that came out of that story, and I'm sure they're not totally disconnected, is the fact that nothing has been announced at this stage, but there is certainly the strong rumour going around is that in the run-up to the state election, the state government will announce, and they've said that they were looking for a possible site for a Victorian motorsport centre, and apparently it's Avalon has now firmed as the site of that particular that particular venue, and that the government are going to announce it in the run-up to the election, a $300 million investment to build a Victorian motorsport centre somewhere out Avalon way, which would be desperately needed, partly to replace Sandown. Sandown's just got a stay of execution. Sandown will not be around that much longer. It might not go next year or even the year after, but Sandown will be shut down one way or another.
They're talking 27, 28. So
they're saying 27, 28, and that would be they might get a little bit they might get a little bit longer than that, but
I think it's depending on whichever the state government, whoever it may be, whether it's all short or long term, decides to invest in either Avalon or Calder Park. And well, Lindsay's got a bigger, louder voice than what Rodney has at times. So let's just see how it pans out.
Well, I think Lindsay and Andrew should be looking at the track that they already own and having a look at that. Certainly this week, Roland Dane in his column in Speed Cafe was very outspoken about the condition of Phillip Island and saying that yes, it's a fabulous circuit and everybody loves it, but it is in desperate need of some improvements, and most of the improvements that he suggested are basically common sense, but it will take a lot of money. I mean, even as so far as things are saying, for God's sake, get in some decent access under the track, like at least put in 2 tunnels there so you can get in and out without sort of queuing up waiting for lights to change, and also just to provide some decent pit areas, decent spots where you can park transporters, decent facilities for corporates. I mean, you've got 2 World Championship events there. And part of the reason that supercars, basically didn't want there is, and I remember that Tony Cochran, used to absolutely hate the place. He said, it was just a terrible place for corporates, terrible place. He said it was basically a street circuit, and that's what they do for the Grand Prix. They bring in all the extra grandstands, they bring in all the, people are out in marquees and all the rest of it, and I think that it's right. The place needs some money spent on it now.
Well, that's completely outrageous. You can't be doing that, because that means if you and I and Richard's probably driven over it, but you and I do it quite regularly. That means they'll have to move the helipad if they're going to put transporters and stuff like that. The helipad's, that's just an institution. They're out in the middle of that grass area. They'll have to move it. That's just outrageous. Oh, well.
Yeah, Boxane drove past Calder a couple of weeks ago. Sad sight looking from the highway. It's not a particularly cheerful sight from inside either. It's pretty dismal last time I was
my
out.
favourite movie destination.
So I briefly looked at the article. I skimmed over it like you're saying, Brett. But one thing I also did was I skimmed over some of the comments. And one of the workers decided to jump on. And he decided to do a little bit of defensive typing skills for a little bit. And when he got challenged in a couple of things, he said, well, hey, you're wrong, I'm right. And they went, well, why? He says, because I work there every day. I'm one of the current everyday staff. So he's actually cleaning up. So everyone's, they were commenting like Richard was on the track. They were commenting on the dome. They were commenting on lots and lots of different stuff. Anyway, if a few people said, oh, yeah, I've drove past, it looks like a dump. Oh, I've been there, I drove on it last weekend for this. Oh, I've done this, I've been there for drifting. Oh, bloody drags are opening. However, this guy actually works there, and he legitimately proved it as well too. And he said what happened in the last 12 months to the reason why those corporate boxes and they were cleaned up on the top of the dome, and there's the regular maintenance crew that he's a part of, and they regularly do the lawns and the manicure and stuff. Is a lot of the winds and the storms have damaged stuff, so they've had to naturally clean it up anyway. So that's why it looks like there's been work done to it. So they've actually just cleaned things up.
Yeah, well, the local council jumped up and down, fairly recently, sometime about mid last year. The local council, just after the pandemic sort of restrictions lifted, and basically said to Rodney, this place is an eyesore and it really needs, because there were tumbleweeds and all sorts of things, blowing down the Calder Freeway, as so they said, like clean this place up or else. So so they cleaned it up.
I wanted to make a dystopian zombie film out there.
Oh, look,
Get in quick.
Yeah, well, I mean, it has been used for that. What's one of the things? I mean, it is actually still turning over some money. It is used a lot for television commercials. It has been used a lot for films, for videos, for music videos. Kiss did one of a video for one of their, like, this was about 4 or 5 years ago, but Kiss came out. No one knew, but they came out and they basically staged a fake concert in the middle of the Thunderdome because they knew they could do it without anybody seeing
Paul,
what
Gene, and
was
Ace.
going on. So they were out there doing they trucked in people. They had their fans from the local sort of the Kiss fan club, the Kiss Army.
Full band. Paul, Gene, Ace, Freely. Yeah.
Well, I think just Paul, Gene, and Tommy Thayer and the other bloke. So
and Ace,
anyway.
Freely. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's that would be good to have that back.
Quickly,
Dave,
Dave
Stillwell has joined us incidentally not via video but via audio, and he's finally got a weekend off. Yes, you've been all over the place in the last 3 weeks, Dave.
The last 3 weeks, try the last 6. This is my first weekend off after spending the last 6 weekends at racetracks somewhere, and then of course I'm off to the Gold Coast next weekend.
Yeah, so you're not going to the Bend. That's a bit rough.
Well, the Bend's medical services are handled by a different provider, so all the best to the team from Ambulance Service Australia looking after the Shannon Internationals this weekend. But no, not one of the. It's good to get a weekend off for a change because I think I'm booked out basically every weekend from now until Christmas.
Yeah, it's a bit like that, isn't it? Somebody said, like, what are you doing in the weekend? I said, I'll be at a racetrack, and then I was thinking about there was going to be the US car show out at Caribbean Gardens, but I met a guy today had pulled up at the local shopping centre here at Hampton Park in a Javelin, beautiful Javelin, and yeah, he said that he was. Saying how well presented it was, and he said, "Well, I've given it a good polish up for the show, which is now not going to happen because, like everything else, like the Calder Park drags tomorrow night, plus stuff at Heathcote and a whole bunch of things, various speedway events have been cancelled on the weekend. They've all been cancelled because of the weather, and this has been cancelled as well. So I have a rare weekend off as well. So looking forward to it, I suppose. I'll probably by about sort of 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, I'll be tearing the walls down, but whatever. So where were you last? You were at you were down the island?
MotoGP.
No, MotoGP. So what did you think of it all? I mean, once again they had a surprisingly big crowd under the circumstances. Seemed to be a great atmosphere again. What's your take on the weekend?
Well, the whole theme for the weekend for all of the volunteers was, and I believe it was reflected in the AGPC marketing mantra, was where we belong. There was a real energy in the paddock amongst all the internationals. Certainly all of the FIM people and the Dorna people that I came into contact with were really enthused to be back in Australia. They really do love coming here. Putting aside any complaints about the level of facilities in the paddock for four-wheeled motorsport, certainly for two-wheeled motorsport, it's everyone just kind of fits in and kind of works. And I think it was the largest crowd they'd had since Casey Stoner's farewell season in 2012, which just goes to show there's a real appetite for major events in Victoria. And of course, we get to test out what that mood is like for superbikes in a couple of weeks. So I think, full credit to the AGPC, to Dorna, to Motorcycling Australia, and to Phillip Island for putting together a fantastic event. Particularly given all the myriad number of challenges that they had, both weather and otherwise, in terms of adjusting and adapting the event to, meet the needs of the spectators and the fans. I mean, trying to get out of the joint on the Sunday night, it was a bit of an abbreviated program the Sunday with it all being international sessions. But, there were queues a mile long to catch the shuttle buses back into Cowes. So there were plenty of people there right till the end on Sunday.
Yeah, well, certainly. I'd forgot about when I said a weekend off. I mean, that depends if you have accreditation or if you're going out to Marvel Stadium. Because as Paul's pointing out, World Supercross is happening tomorrow and Saturday as well, and I think that's going to be on 7+ as well if you want to have a look at that. Unfortunately, we tried to sort of get some information. I've been onto them I've been sending them emails for a while now, and today they finally said, "Oh, sorry, here's all of our press releases that we've sent everybody else for the last 3 weeks. Here you go, have a look at them now." So they're too late to do too much with them now, but that's going to be a big event happening at Marvel Stadium, and unfortunately they're not having.
Is that the new World Supercross that Tony Cochrane's got a hand
That
in?
is, yeah. That's the Tony Cochrane experience. So so he'll be part of that, putting that all together. So that's on Channel 7 tomorrow night and I suppose Saturday night. So there you go. So so World Supercross happening at Marvel Stadium, and that's coming up this weekend as well. Falcon DJ17 saying the laps of the Thunderdome, half the international. Couldn't figure out the electronic stability control. Okay, yes, couldn't figure out the banked corners. Yeah, that I can imagine that. Yeah, saw some of that. They have been running some events out at Calder, like those those budget endurance things, and so you can get out there, and people are, and of course running the drifting there. The interesting thing in terms of the drags, Rodney specifically said that they were running off street stuff. I've put in a phone call to Pete from Calder Park Drag Racing to see if I can find out more of what's happening. But certainly the last time I spoke to Peter, he had no more idea than anybody else because he was just waiting to get some indications from Rodney as to what was going on. So whether we'll see sort of full scale drag racing back there sooner rather than later, I don't know at this stage, but I do know the plan is to have regular off-street drag racing, the various Fast Fridays, coming up probably once every couple of weeks, once they can get in with the weather, because they've now postponed the first two, so they're going to try again next Friday week, and apparently from what someone said online, the long-term weather forecast for next Friday and for the end of next week is more rain. So yeah, we can't take a trick at the moment.
Well, that'll do nothing but dampen your enthusiasm, won't it?
Yes, that's true. I think everybody's enthusiasm is dampened right across Australia at the moment because they're copping another downpouring in Queensland and New South Wales as we speak, and we're going to cop some more over the next couple of days tomorrow, it's not going to be that heavy, but it's going to be enough with the ground that wet already.
All the way through to next Saturday, it's got somewhere between 60 to 100% of rain every day. Although it won't be cold, worst minimum is 17 on the day, so across. But yeah, chance of raining all the way through to next Saturday.
So if Dan Andrews does want to build this, this new Victorian motorsport event, we have to ask him to put a roof over the top of the thing.
Oh yeah, well they did it at Melbourne Park and Amy Park and other sporting events. Exactly, just go for the world record for the biggest dome you've ever had.
That's it. They could feasibly, you think they'd be able to do it for a drag strip at least.
So, yeah, certainly, that's plausible.
Yeah, I mean, with it doesn't have to be sort of locked in at the side. You could just have sort of like shade cloth type, coverage over the top with fiberglass. I'm sure there'd be a way.
You're talking sails, okay? Yeah,
yeah, that's that sort of thing.
It's one that someone over in America hasn't just gone. Oh, why don't we do it? And there'll be a whole lot of people that we not necessarily make it completely work would do it. Before we go to Knackers, I saw your ticket down the bottom there for Nathan Hearn going over and competing in some Trans Am. Also, Aaron Cameron's over there for TCR and doing a bit of a diary, so check out that as well too. He's a good friend of the show, and good luck to both of them, Nathan and Aaron, in their exploits overseas, and go you good
And
things.
the interesting thing is that Aaron is apparently running in like the Trans Am series, not in TA2. So these are the faster cars. These are the 740 plus horsepower, full-scale Trans Am cars, very similar in sort of concept and look and all the rest of them, but with a much more powerful engine and probably some better handling and all the rest of it. So that's a really fast car. So that's a great opportunity for Nathan that's come up, and it's something that's sort of, once again, Gary Rogers getting behind sort of, young talent in Australia and throwing his weight behind them, full on. Out at Winton on the weekend, the Formula Festival, a great event. 12 Formula 5000s. Now, apparently, it looks now as if there will be Formula 5000s racing at Sandown in the historic Sandown. They were not going to race there originally, but apparently there's been some discussions, and certainly from what I heard today, Formula 5000s will be racing at historic Sandown in a few weeks' time. So
6th
probably
of November, I think. 6th.
Yeah, probably with a field of about 10 to 12 cars if they all recover from the weekend. But we had the photos.
Fingers crossed how many are out there and how many stay on the track for the whole day, yeah.
Well, they looked amazing. We had the photos, and if you watch tonight's show at 9:30, have a look at the photos that are our backdrop tonight, because they were supplied by Peter Ellenbogen, who was up there and shooting the things, and we had about 20 photos that he sent through to us of the 5000s racing out there, and they just look fantastic. There's just something about them that just looks amazing. Roy is with us again. G'day, Roy. How are you? Saying the sound at Avalon. Yeah, the area should be full of new estate. I suppose if they build it close to the airport, there'd be no excuse, because if you're going to go out there, you're going to move next to an airport, you're going to move next to a racetrack. You probably only got yourself to blame if you're worried about bloody noise, but then that doesn't stop them, of course. We know that already.
That doesn't stop anybody.
No, that's...
Well, they'll complain about free beer on a Sunday.
What isn't Wakefield up to 24,000 signatures now at least? So that's on its way.
Yeah, they've got the 20,000 signatures they needed to have it raised in Parliament. The opposition sports minister has apparently said that they will raise it in the House. I'm sure something is going to happen there. I mean, because it's hard to find anybody who is actually against it. The local council have said, no, we want it to stay. We want it to be open. We don't want to see the place closed. Obviously, the Benalla Auto Club don't want it closed. The competitors don't want it closed. Local businesses don't want it closed. It's really only a very small handful of local troublemakers who are saying that let's shut the thing down because of the noise. But they don't have any. But it seems to be like the government in New South Wales at the moment. Not especially friendly towards motorsport, it would seem, apart from the fact that in an interview with Mark Fogarty on the Parked Up podcast, Eugene Arocca from Motorsport Australia was saying that he believes that the bid to get the Grand Prix away from Melbourne was possibly over 10 years, was possibly close to $1 billion. And he said, well, seeing you didn't get the Grand Prix, perhaps you could spend just a small percentage of that $1 billion you were prepared to pay to actually, get some decent facilities, save Wakefield Park, put some money into some other tracks there, because it's an absolute disgrace. One of the biggest states in Australia, certainly the biggest in terms of population, and really at the moment, they've got one track.
Yeah. And hey, no, they might get some actually popularity and momentum from it, and people will appreciate motorsport, and they'll get some support when they want to go for things in future.
Yeah, Paul's pointing out Avalon Speedway has noise issues already. Yeah, I think it's just going to come in. But once again, how long has Avalon Speedway been there? It's been there for as long as I can remember. It's got to be there for 30 years or so. So anybody who's moved out in the last 30 years out there, you've only got yourself to blame. You've got no sympathy for them at all.
Doesn't make any difference, Brett. But they'll complain about anything for any reason at any time. And, they park themselves up near the front gate and complain about the traffic.
Yeah, 1976, Avalon
opened. Should we check in with Mike Raymond on that? Avalon Raceway's been there.
Yeah, so it's been going for a long, long time, and I think it's unfortunate that it's become a real problem, and it's not just with motorsport. I mean, we've seen it like in the inner city as well with live music venues, and they've actually created some laws to say basically, like if you move into a venue, then that's your problem now. It's like you can't suddenly move next to a live music venue and say,
And
hey,
try
can
and
you
shut
shut
it
down
down.
this? Try and shut this down, and they should be doing the same for motorsport as well by saying, okay, if you're going to, there's a track in the area, or you should be told there's a track in the area. The problem is, as I said before, is you get sort of crooked real estate agents. Crooked real estate. Crooked is redundant when it comes to real estate agents.
Okay,
Real estate
that's
agents.
a very loose term there, but we know we know where you're coming from.
Allegedly.
Yeah,
Allegedly,
yeah.
allegedly.
Yes, everything's allegedly.
Well, nothing allegedly in this case,
Not
because I was
proven.
told when I was told when I was looking for a place out in Springvale, just down the road from Sandown, they were telling me, and this was like over 20 years ago. Oh, the track's closing down at the end of the year. They're closing it down. It's finished. Don't worry about the noise of the track. That's closing down. Going to be one more meeting, and that's it. It's gone forever. And lots of people were told that, and now they're turning around and saying, hang on, we've been here for 5 years now, the bloody thing's still going. The real estate agent promised us that this was getting shut down. Well,
Talking
the fact
big
was
pies. That's all, folks.
yeah, there was no move to shut it down, and now even the council, there were people on the council who were very anti Sandown, and now the city of Greater Dandenong have turned around and gone, actually, it's a pretty good community venue, and
They're all pro Sandown now. That's been well touted.
yeah. So they're not.
Swings and roundabouts.
There's lots of things you can use the track, the whole precinct for, not just the motor racing.
We attended Leisure Fest a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
and they used every part of the facility they possibly
It
could.
was huge. It was a bigger crowd. The Thursday crowd, and as Doc will into the Thursday and Friday, the weather was terrible. It flooded, major league flooding on Friday. Didn't matter. There were still the crowds on Thursday and Friday for Leisure Fest were bigger than any supercar event. It was the biggest crowd I've seen at Sandown since the Australian Grand Prix, the 50th anniversary Australian Grand
And if
Prix.
you follow that lead, Saturday was bigger because it was sardines. It was huge, and we could see from elevated level, there are caravans as far as Darwin. I'm telling you, every company had everything on show there. And
it's a great venue for that sort of thing, and that's why it's unfortunate that it's not used more. And I think it's probably because of the cost and all the rest of it. But it really is ideal, and even for things, I'm surprised it's not used for more things like car shows and all the rest of it. For things, even something, and perhaps not Motor Classica because that goes into, but something like a Motor Classica or a smaller scale car show in that area under the grandstand in conjunction with, say, a Victorian State Round or a Shannon's Nationals or something like that, would be a fantastic idea because they've got all of that area, that undercover area. They've got all the restaurants. It's a great venue.
I think maybe that's catered for when they have the Sandown Historics there, because a lot of the clubs are openly invited across. It doesn't matter what manufacturer your allegiance is to. And they do them underneath the pavilion, and they do them out in the open. They do them on the land, out there, the seating out at the front there. So they even use Red Hill. A couple of the clubs even use Red Hill and put their cars on display. So I think there is that catering there for that subject matter. It is. But look, if you just want to have an exclusive car show, then Brett, your idea is awesome. Someone could take it on.
Well, we spoke about it with Wade Calderwood, who was in charge at Sandown there. We were looking at doing something out there quite a few years ago, in association with I can't say too, but association with a major media organisation, a motorsport media organisation, not in this country, an overseas one, who were looking to do something in Australia. And I was sounding them out about the possibility, and they were very keen. But the cost of hiring the place and using it for that purpose, and that's why I was sort of saying you could perhaps twin it with a race meeting like a state round or a Shannon's Nationals. Like, imagine a thing like a SEMA show or the Australian Automotive Aftermarket Expo, or like a local version of the PRI show. Imagine that out at Sandown, on a weekend where you've got cars running around the track, and you could say, hey, come out, see the show, see the classic race cars, go to the trade stands, buy your bits and pieces for your hotted up local, for your car, for your road car, for your race car, all the rest of it, and also wander up to the grandstand and watch action in the round 3 of the Victorian State Circuit Racing Championship. I think it'd be you could have a really great weekend out of it. It's a terrific
If only
venue.
if only we had Mike Raymond to do the ads for it. Head on down to Sandown Raceway this weekend. We've got performance racing, motorsport, automotive themed, and racing in the grandstands. Be there.
Okay. Buy your chrome tips.
Well, you could take it there. You could take over there. I mean, I'm sure that Hey, I wonder if he
Doing well,
copyrighted that. I wonder if he copyrighted "Be There"
I
because that was
won't
actually he got that originally, of course, from Jack Little. That was the
wrestler.
catchphrase. Yeah, that was the catchphrase for this Saturday night at Festival Hall. Be there. So anyway, yes. Anything else? Well, MotoGP on track, Doc. What do you think? What do you think of the riders? A lot of the riders were not happy with the situation. They've all said that they want the track resurfaced. Even Jack's come out and said that look, it's been over 10 years now. It really needs a resurface. And also they were very, very concerned and angry about the situation with the local wildlife there. And we've all had run-ins with the wildlife at Phillip Island, with geese and magpies and snakes and wallabies and all sorts of things. If you do anything out at Phillip Island, you are going to come across the wildlife.
Oh, like you said in your post, I did say it, and I think Richard jumped on board as well, though, too. It's just racing at the zoo, and that's okay. It's not the Melbourne Zoo. It's a little bit less fauna around. But, look, Jack, on both sides of the coin, you did mention Jack, though, he was complaining about the track like all the other riders. On the other side of the coin, though, what Jacqueline said about the wildlife, bad luck, rubber duck or real duck, you're just going to have to put up with. This is Australia. I'm riding in it. Everyone else rides it every week or drives in it. Too bad, so sad. This is the wildlife. You put up with it. I'm going back to the track. I don't want to spoil what we talked about on the show tonight, which is going to be in about 15, 18 minutes' time. But, yeah, there was some very concise comments made by a few riders. And, look, I still remember when it was surfaced last time 10 years ago. It's gone so quickly, but I think we've had 2 or 3 years off. It's probably
it's still very. I mean, if you drive around the place, I mean, well, Richard, you've driven on it fairly. I think Dave would have.
I didn't see a problem myself.
No, if you're driving around, certainly if you're driving around on it, I've only driven around on it in a road car in Getsy, but I mean, it's as smooth as it's a billiard table smooth in a. But
nothing like Sandown.
Yeah.
Sandown's
I mean, Sandown's rough even in my car, even in the Gets. So
you need 4-wheel drive suspension and for Sandown.
You've got to remember that on the front straight they're doing close to 350 kilometres an hour.
Well, there was new record set still, so you're 100% right.
Yeah. Look, compared to almost every other track around the country, the Phillip Island surface is definitely one of the top 2 or 3 in terms of its consistency and its lack of bumps. But, the riders have got a reasonable point, when it was laid in 2012, we're now 10 years on, that's 10 years of, massively hot summers, 10 years of massively wet winters. The surface does degrade over time. I mean, we've certainly had nowhere near the amount of issues with it that, say the BRDC has had with Silverstone over the years with the number of attempts they've had to get that circuit right. And certainly the issues that they had with drainage on the Thursday would indicate that, if you're going to try to future-proof at least the racing surface side of things, when you resurface it, look at ways in which you can improve the drainage as well. But it's one of those things that, that the Lynn Fox Group will weigh up, the reinvestment in the facility versus, that return on that investment. We'd all like to have it be a massively top-notch facility, but when it's only used for international events twice a year, and supercars can give them no guarantee they'll actually be going back there. Who are they really redeveloping it for?
Well, that's the problem. I mean, and as was pointed out, if you spend the money, because I remember when the Grand Prix went back to Phillip Island, we went down and we had an interview with Andrew Fox. And we were talking about at the time the cost of using the venue for things like the Victorian State Series. And he was totally unapologetic to it. He said, as far as we're concerned, this is a business. This is a world-class circuit. It's one of the best circuits. And if you want to continue using it, you're going to have to pay the cost, and it's going to have to make us money. We're not doing this because of the love of the sport. This is an investment, and the investment has to pay off.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch, just back to the thing, Mark Marquez, I think, was shouting drinks in the Honda team on the Sunday night. And this is put your surprise face on everybody. Casey Stoner was down there for the weekend, the first time in many, many years, and it was great getting the family thing together. He had a couple of kids on. It was great, signed a lot of autographs, and said he felt really invigorated. He's had a couple of tough years, he said, with his chronic fatigue syndrome and decided he wanted to do some fishing and not interested in bike racing. But he's done a few overseas things and done some testing for Ducati and Honda and stuff. However, Mark Marquez openly admitted and said, I took a lot of Casey Stoner's rhetoric and lines and tips and watched a lot of footage and used the way he wrote it. I did exactly the same, and it came up trumps for him. So, a lot can be said for that. And the other thing was they did ride to the island with Chris Vermeulen, and Chris and Casey are good mates going way back and used to ride together in MotoGP. And they were talking a lot about in that documentary on their favourite parts of the circuit as they were riding around on a couple of bikes. So, but look, the feedback from all the riders is, aside from the slight criticisms they had about the wildlife and the track degradation, they said it's still a great event. They love coming here. It's fantastic. They were really rapt to be back. Couple of debutantes. We had obviously Martin put it on pole. And even though they're complaining about the track, 2 or 3 of the riders, it's the fastest they've ever done a lap around Phillip Island, full stop ever. And as Stilly mentioned before, the top speeds of the bikes hit just a smidgen under, 350 Ks. That's just some crazy speed. So, sometimes you've got to wait for the environment to catch up with you a little bit.
Yeah, well, certainly a track that doesn't have any problems with surface at the moment, you wouldn't think anyway, or at least you'd hope, is obviously the Bend, as SB's pointing out. Great value for money. I must admit that, sort of if I had have been sort of, more cashed up and I had have had a bit more time, I was sort of looking at even possibly going over to the Bend this weekend, because I haven't seen a race, and it is going to be a really big weekend, because you've got the Australian Rally Championship running around there. You've got the Murray Bridge Auto Fest. You've got the GT Festival. There's a whole bunch of things happening. It's a really big weekend out there. It'll be a fabulous weekend, and would be a really good weekend to sort of get away. Hopefully the weather would be nicer than because they're probably going to cop some rain and wind as well, but ultimately it's going to be a great weekend of racing there. And I like that whole concept, that sort of motorsport festival sort of concept that they're running out there. And of course next year they'll be able to add drag racing to that mixture as well, because the opening of the track has been delayed, unfortunately, because of the weather and all the rest of it. But the track will, by that time, should be well and truly open, and it's looking fantastic. And you'll have certainly South Australia are going to have a proper first class, world class, international drag strip out at Tailem Bend, and that'll be fantastic. Not just for South Australia, but also for people in Victoria, particularly over the west of Victoria, because if you're over anywhere sort of the other side of Melbourne, Adelaide's it's not, Tailem Bend is not that far away really.
I was about to say, is it on your bucket list to go have a drive over there, Richard?
I wouldn't mind. Now that this coming year I'll be doing as much driving as I can, I might even do Sydney if I can. That would be good too.
Put out the flyer, and I'll jump on your pit crew list if you want to hammer something.
Cool.
I guess that's one of the advantages of. I guess that's one of the advantages of having the Hyundai Excel, Richard, is that there's opportunities to race at basically every track in the country, often multiple times a year.
Yes. If you're really dead set, you could do it almost every weekend.
Yeah, well, you're right. You certainly could because I mean it is big everywhere. I think it's hard to find them though. I mean, I was actually at the Wreckers today, and I was wandering around and always keep an eye out to have a look and see what's around in terms of these. There was one XL and there wasn't much left on it. There's pretty much everything that you could drag off of an XL had been dragged off the XL. So there was basically a roof and A, B, and C pillars. That was about all it was. That was about all that was left.
Oh, if you're looking for the panels, it'll be it'll be in the next race at either Sandown or Phillip Island or somewhere. That's where you'll find the rest of the car.
Yeah, pretty much so. As well. Once again, as Falcon DJ17 saying, love the circuit at Phillip Island. Only get to 220. 220 is not too bad, but 220 at Sandown is scary in places. Yeah, certainly coming
on the
over
main
the top
straight.
of Well, it's so much better. I remember years ago, they actually, for one weekend, they decided to try and run supercarts there. And I had some amazing photos. I forget who took them. It might have been Chris Carter or someone took them for Auto Action. But there was a whole bunch of photos of as they were heading into turn one of supercarts about sort of, 5 inches off the ground.
Sorry, what did you say? Super trucks? Did you say, Brett? Super trucks?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had the ramps for
Well,
them,
that's one of the things that was one of the reasons that they stopped the super trucks after one meeting at Sandown, because Davo said the damage that they caused to the track at the time, not just the surface, but also when they went off, caused, he said, cost them an absolute fortune, he said, to repair. He said the repairs they had to make to the track after running the trucks there.
Good excuse to actually fix it a bit more if they're damaging it.
Somebody's got to pay for that.
Weren't there some damaged reputation about some jumping castle? You don't remember that jumping castle?
That's right. That was at the Eastern Nats. Yes,
yeah,
I remember. Yes, I remember that. Yes, I do remember and that had its own problems. We won't go there, but yes, that was a very interesting. The jumping castle perhaps wasn't suitable for the intended audience. If the intended audience was children, if the intended audience were dirty old men, it was a winner. But, but not for children.
Where was this castle situated?
We won't go in.
We'll explain later. It's probably not even good for YouTube.
I'm not googling that. I'll just rather hear the innuendo.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's real.
Anyone know if they run supercarts in Tassie? I'm not sure. I know there's a couple of supercart guys. I might find out from Nick Shembry or Rolf Mammers or somebody from. Somebody from Supercars might be able to tell us. I've got in the back of my mind that they have certainly run them at Simmons Plains in the past. So not sure about Baskerville, but Baskerville would be a fabulous track for supercars.
Still, you might know Townsville. They run some carts up at Townsville.
No.
Well, they have a dedicated proper kart track in Townsville, but it'll be interesting to see once they get that Northern Queensland Motorsport Complex up and running, which is about 40k out of town. It'll be interesting to see what sort of categories pop up and are popular up there, whether it'll be some of the existing Motorsport Australia categories like improved production and excels and sports sedans and things like that, or whether it'll be something completely indigenous to the area that, given the tyranny of distance, they may have, I don't know, they'll have Suzuki Swift Racing or Toyota Camry racing or something like that.
They have, Queensland has the strangest, but then again, they have the strangest categories, but Excel was one of those strange categories. I mean, when it came out, everyone went, you're kidding. They're racing Excels, my God, they'll race anything up in Queensland, and look how successful it's turned out to be, but it's, they have over the years.
The Toyota Camry Avalon, not
remember the Geminis? Started in Queensland.
Geminis, as Paul's pointing out, supercars
and
did
they're
run as a
still
Formula
racing
1
in
support.
Queensland.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, they're still, the Geminis are still up and about in Queensland. Yeah, supercars did run as a Formula 1 support. That was one of the good things about Formula 1, and I hope that they will continue to do that for the return of the Adelaide 500, in that they will. They always made room on that category in the Australian Grand Prix. The South Australian Motorsport Board always included a local category. You had supercarts, you had sports sedans, you had Group N historic touring cars, series production cars ran there. Every year there was all of the, there was the supercars, or the equivalent at the time, the Group A and Group C cars and all the rest of it. But you did have, every year there would usually be one sort of featured, national category, and the supercarts were on there one year. I remember a particularly big crash there. I think someone went into a concrete wall there fairly quickly.
It's worth checking out the card for Adelaide coming up. It's not that far away. It's only a few weeks when you think about it. So I wonder what the card's going to be like for support categories. I'll have to check that out. That'd be good.
But anyway, we better head off in just a moment, because if you go over to channel 31, or in fact if you stay on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel, because at 9:30 this week's edition of In Pit Lane will be on. Our special guest is Abby Wingett. She's going to join us. Also, we have music from Shed Dads. The Shed Dads, they sort of came on board at the last minute after our original muso failed to show, and the Shed Dads were made themselves and their music available. So thank you to the Shed Dads, and really good they were too. So you can watch the Shed Dads plus all of the stuff, including, speaking of karts, we've got some gearbox karts and some action from the ROK Cup out at Oakley.
We'd like to thank the management of the Shed Dads for approving as well, though, too, unlike some of our other people that are supposed to come on the show where the management steps in and says you cannot play. So, well, thank you to the Shed Dads management for approving their appearance.
So thanks to the Shed Dads, because it really was a last minute. We'd set up for someone to come in and they just didn't show, and eventually we found out at about sort of 7:45 after having set up for them that no, they decided they weren't turning up. So under the circumstance, without telling us, so that really messed us around. But some of the
through a third party,
we had some people who had done some work with the Shed Dads, some of our crew, who the volunteer crew at RMITV, and they managed to get onto people from the Shed Dads and say, hey, can we use the stuff that we shot with you the other day in the studio? And they went, yeah, of course. So yeah, great. Thank you to the Shed Dads. Okay, yes, that's right, Barbara. I was thinking of Barbara Hepworth, the supercart driver. Yes, she was the one who whacked the fence. So I do remember that now. So I think I've probably got that. It's probably on one of the tapes that, if Roy hasn't got it already, I know that I've got it somewhere sitting around there. Okay, guys, we better head off now. Thanks for joining us on Full Course Yellow. Hope you'll join us again next week on the program at the same time. Enjoy In Pit Lane, and we'll see you next week. But until then, stay safe, have a good weekend, and we'll catch you next week. But until then, from all of us, we'll say bye for now. See you later.
Have a good one.